A single hairpin holding a silk bun in place was the only thing standing between a teenage girl and a firing squad. To the military police patrolling the sun-drenched, exhaust-choked streets of Saigon in 1968, she was just another elegant student on a Vespa, her tailored audai fluttering in the breeze. They did not look twice at the woven basket of fresh jasmine resting on her floorboard, assuming she was on her way to a family altar or a temple. But beneath those fragrant white petals lay a steel canister containing hand-drawn maps of the city's most secure military installations, complete with guard rotation schedules and encrypted radio frequencies. If she were stopped and searched, her life would end in a dark interrogation room or the brutal concrete cells of Con Dao prison. This was not an isolated act of desperation, but a calculated, daily reality for thousands of women during the Vietnam War. While history books often paint this conflict as a clash of male armies in green fatigues, the true spine of the resistance was quiet, feminine, and utterly invisible to the world's most advanced military machine. How did ordinary schoolgirls, young mothers, and grandmothers become some of the most effective intelligence agents, logistics experts, and combat engineers in modern warfare? The answer lies in a hidden war where hairpins held military secrets, and the softest voices commanded the deadliest operations. To understand how a global superpower was halted, we must look beyond the battlefields of Khe Sanh and the Ia Drang Valley, and step into the shadow world of the women who rewrote the rules of engagement. They were not just victims of a tragic conflict, they were active, brilliant strategists who turned their perceived weakness into their greatest tactical advantage. They operated in the plain sight of an enemy who could not conceive of young women organizing complex logistical networks or leading guerrilla units. Every day, they walked a tightrope between survival and execution, carrying the weight of a nation's destiny in their quiet, determined steps. This invisible army did not just support the war, they directed its flow, managed its secrets, and rebuilt its shattered pathways under a relentless rain of steel. They understood the psychology of their occupiers better than any high-ranking general in Washington or Saigon, using the deeply ingrained gender biases of the era as a flawless camouflage. While the world watched the massive movements of conventional troops, these women quietly laid the groundwork for an entirely different kind of warfare, one where the front line was everywhere and nowhere at once. They proved that the most formidable weapon in any conflict is not the one that makes the most noise, but the one that remains completely unseen until the decisive moment. To truly comprehend the scale of female participation in this mid-20th century conflict, we must first dismantle a Western myth that has long clouded the history of Southeast Asia. For centuries, external observers viewed Vietnamese women through a lens of colonial paternalism, assuming them to be passive, submissive observers of history who were confined strictly to the domestic sphere. But in Vietnam, the tradition of the female warrior is older than the nation-state itself, deeply woven into the cultural DNA of the land. There is an ancient Vietnamese proverb that says, "When the enemy comes to the house, even the women must fight." This was not a modern political slogan, but a cultural reality forged through centuries of foreign invasions. 2,000 years ago, when the nation was struggling under the yoke of the Han dynasty, the legendary Trung sisters rode elephants into battle to expel the invaders, establishing an independent kingdom and etching their names forever into the national consciousness. Centuries later, Lady True famously declared that she would rather ride the storms, tame the killer whales, and drive out the invaders than bow her head as a concubine. When the war against French colonial rule transitioned into the conflict with the United States and its allies, this ancient archetype was systematically revived, modernized, and mobilized on an unprecedented scale. The concept of the three responsibilities, known in Vietnamese as Ba Dam Dang, emerged as a defining social contract for millions of women across the country. Under this directive, women were called upon to run agricultural and industrial production at home, manage family affairs so their husbands and sons could go to the front lines, and when necessary, take up arms to defend their villages directly. This was not mere political propaganda, it was an absolute survival strategy for a small, agrarian nation facing the overwhelming industrial and technological might of the world's greatest superpower. The division between the front line and the home front ceased to exist entirely. Fields became battlefields, kitchens became bomb shelters, and the very fabric of daily life was thoroughly militarized. The mobilization of women was so total that by the late 1960s, hundreds of thousands of young girls had volunteered for service, not as supporting staff or administrative clerks, but as the primary labor force keeping the nation's vital supply lines open under a relentless rain of fire. They stepped into roles previously reserved exclusively for men, operating heavy machinery, managing complex agricultural cooperatives, and forming local militia units that guarded villages from aerial attacks, proving that gender was no barrier to national defense. They became both the economic backbone and the physical shield of their communities, ensuring that society could function even as millions of tons of explosives transformed their landscape into a cratered wasteland. Nowhere was this commitment more visible, or more dangerous, than on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This vast, labyrinthine network of dirt roads, mountain passes, and river crossings cut through some of the most rugged jungle terrain on Earth, serving as the absolute lifeline for the Southern resistance. To sever this vital artery, the United States military unleashed Operation Commando Hunt, dropping millions of tons of explosives, defoliants like Agent Orange, and state-of-the-art sensory devices designed to detect the slightest movement, heat, or sound. To keep the traffic moving despite this technological onslaught, the North Vietnamese government deployed the Youth Volunteers, or Thanh Nguyen Dung Phong. Up to 70% of these volunteers in key sectors were young women, many of them teenagers who had lied about their age to enlist, driven by a fierce sense of patriotism and adventure. Their mission was simple yet terrifying: repair the bombed-out roads, defuse unexploded ordnance, and guide military convoys through the pitch-black night. They lived in damp caves and makeshift leaf huts, battling malaria, leeches, venomous snakes, and constant sleep deprivation. When American bombers shattered the roads, these young women rushed into the smoking craters with shovels, baskets, and bare hands, working through the night to fill the voids before the next convoy arrived. They became human guideposts. In the dense jungle darkness, where headlights could not be used for fear of attracting airstrikes, girls would dress in white shirts or hold white bamboo markers, standing at the edge of sheer cliffs and bomb craters to guide truck drivers safely through the treacherous passes. They knew they were targets. Every whistling sound in the sky meant they had seconds to dive into shallow trenches, yet they returned to the roads night after night, driven by a fierce determination that baffled American strategists who monitored the trail from high-altitude surveillance planes. These young women endured unimaginable physical hardships, their hair falling out due to illness and stress, their skin yellowed by malaria. Yet they maintained an incredible spirit of camaraderie, singing songs and writing poetry in the dark to drown out the sound of distant explosions. They developed a unique culture of survival, sharing letters, styling each other's hair with wildflowers, and finding moments of joy amidst the constant threat of annihilation. They became the guardians of the trail, ensuring that the flow of men and material never stopped, no matter how many bombs fell. Their presence turned a desolate, terrifying jungle into a community of resistance, where the shared bond of sisterhood became their strongest armor against the horrors of war. The ultimate test of this endurance occurred at a narrow, mud-slick bottleneck in Ha Tinh province known as the Dong Loc Junction. This small patch of earth was the intersection of crucial supply routes, making it the primary target for American bombers who sought to choke off the flow of supplies to the south. It was bombed so relentlessly that the surrounding hills were stripped of all vegetation, transformed into a gray, cratered wasteland resembling the surface of the moon. On July 24, 1968, a squad of 10 young women, led by the charismatic Vo Thi Tan, was stationed at this deadly crossroads. The oldest was 24, the youngest was just 17. They were daughters of farmers, students, and dreamers who had left their peaceful villages to serve their country. Their task was to keep the junction open at all costs, regardless of the intensity of the bombardment. That afternoon, a wave of American fighter bombers roared overhead, unleashing a devastating payload of high explosives. As the dust settled, the road was completely shattered, blocked by massive craters and littered with unexploded delayed action bombs. Knowing that a vital convoy of food and ammunition was scheduled to pass through at nightfall, Vo Thi Tan and her 9 companions did not wait for the dust to clear or for specialized bomb disposal units to arrive. They sprinted onto the burning asphalt, shovels in hand, working frantically under the scorching sun to fill the craters and clear the debris. Suddenly, another wave of aircraft appeared on the horizon. There was no time to run to the deep shelters. A massive bomb detonated directly inside their trench, burying all 10 girls alive under tons of suffocating red earth. When rescue teams finally dug through the debris, they found the girls holding onto their shovels, their bodies lifeless but intact. Their sacrifice was not in vain. The road was cleared, and the convoy passed through safely that night, carrying the supplies that would sustain the resistance in the south. This single, tragic afternoon at Dong Loc became a symbol of the immense cost of the war, illustrating how the fate of the entire conflict often rested on the shoulders of teenagers working in the mud. The story of these 10 young women reverberated across the nation, transforming them into symbols of eternal youth and patriotism. And their resting place at Dong Loc remains a sacred site of remembrance, a quiet clearing where visitors still leave white flowers and small combs, honoring the youth and beauty they sacrificed for their country's survival. Their names are etched into the stone, a permanent reminder of the human cost of keeping the nation's lifeblood flowing. Their story is a testament to the fact that the ultimate sacrifice was often paid not by professional soldiers in uniform, but by young women who chose to stand in the path of the storm. While the young women of the Ho Chi Minh Trail fought a war of physical endurance in the jungles, another equally vital force waged a psychological and political campaign in the occupied cities and villages of the south. This was the Long-Haired Army, or Doi Quan Tok Dai, a highly organized movement of female political activists and guerrilla fighters. Led by the brilliant strategist Nguyen T. Dinh, who would eventually become the first female general of the Vietnam People's Army. This force utilized their gender as a tactical shield. They organized massive, non-violent demonstrations, marching directly towards South Vietnamese and American military posts to protest bombings, forced conscription, and the destruction of ancestral villages. When confronted by armed soldiers, these women would stand their ground, using moral persuasion, maternal appeals, and sheer numbers to force the troops to back down. They would look the young soldiers in the eye and ask them if they would shoot their own mothers or sisters, exploiting the deep-seated Confucian values of respect for elders and family. The soldiers, bound by cultural norms that deeply respected mothers and elders, often found themselves paralyzed, unable to fire upon crowds of unarmed women. Simultaneously, in the heart of Saigon, female intelligence operatives operated in plain sight. They worked as maids in the homes of American generals, secretaries in government offices, and bartenders in clubs frequented by foreign officers. They memorized troop movements, copied top-secret documents, and smuggled weapons inside vegetable carts, hollowed out logs, and even fake pregnancy bellies. The French and American intelligence networks, focused on tracking traditional male military units, consistently underestimated these women, failing to realize that the pleasant street vendor selling fruit outside their headquarters was actually a high-ranking officer coordinating the next urban offensive. These women lived double lives of extraordinary tension, knowing that a single slip of the tongue or a nervous glance could lead to discovery, torture, and death. Yet they maintained their composure, providing the critical intelligence that allowed the resistance to anticipate and counter major military operations. Their contribution proved that intelligence and strategic patience were just as lethal as any weapon on the battlefield. They demonstrated that the quietest whisper in a Saigon cafe could carry more strategic weight than a fleet of bombers, shifting the balance of power from the shadows and proving that the mind of a woman was just as formidable as any army. The story of Vietnam's female fighters offers a profound lesson in the limitations of technological warfare and the power of total social mobilization. For decades, foreign military planners analyzed the conflict through quantitative metrics: body counts, sorties flown, tons of bombs dropped, and technological superiority. They calculated that no society could withstand such intense, concentrated pressure without collapsing. What they failed to factor into their equations was the human element, specifically the complete mobilization of the female population. By treating war as a specialized task reserved only for young men, the adversaries of the Vietnamese resistance underestimated half of the nation's population. Vietnamese women did not merely support the war effort, they were the war effort. They proved that a highly motivated, deeply rooted population, where every individual feels a personal responsibility for national sovereignty, can neutralize even the most advanced military technology. The legacy of these women challenges the traditional, male-dominated narratives of military history, forcing us to redefine what it means to be a soldier. They demonstrated that courage does not require a uniform, and that the most effective resistance is often the one that goes unnoticed until it is too late. Their contribution was not a footnote to the war, it was the foundation upon which the entire victory was built, forever changing the way we understand the dynamics of asymmetric warfare, and proving that the determination of a people cannot be measured on a military spreadsheet. It reminds us that history is not just made by those who sign treaties or lead armies, but by the ordinary individuals who refuse to submit, finding strength in their shared identity and ancient heritage. This historical reality forces us to look beyond the hardware of war and examine the software of human spirit, cultural resilience, and social cohesion. When a nation mobilizes its women, it mobilizes its entire soul, creating an unbreakable chain of resistance that no amount of military hardware can ever hope to shatter. It is a timeless lesson that in the face of overwhelming force, the ultimate defense is not found in the sophistication of weapons, but in the depth of a people's collective will to survive and remain free. To understand how this total mobilization functioned on a practical level, we must look at the specific policies that transformed private lives into public defense. In March 1965, the Vietnam Women's Union launched the Three Responsibilities movement, known in Vietnamese as Ba Dam Dang. This was not a mere propaganda campaign. It was a comprehensive social reorganization. Under this directive, women assumed three monumental tasks: taking over production in factories and fields to sustain the economy, managing their households so their husbands and sons could fight without worry, and directly participating in local militia defense when called upon. This policy effectively erased the traditional boundary between the domestic sphere and the battlefront. Millions of women learned to plow fields with rifles slung over their shoulders, operate heavy industrial machinery under constant bombardment, and coordinate local air defense networks. The consequence of this massive societal shift was a total restructuring of Vietnamese gender dynamics during the war years, proving that women could perform any role previously reserved for men. However, the end of the conflict in 1975 brought a complex and often painful transition. When the surviving male soldiers returned home, many women were expected to quietly step back into traditional domestic roles, their wartime contributions temporarily overshadowed by the grand narratives of conventional military victories. Furthermore, the physical and psychological toll on these women was immense. Decades of carrying heavy loads on the Ho Chi Minh Trail left many with chronic spinal injuries, respiratory illnesses, and premature aging. Exposure to toxic defoliants like Agent Orange led to severe health complications and birth defects in their children, a silent tragedy that lingered for generations. For years, many female veterans also faced social isolation, as the physical toll of their service made it difficult to marry or start families in a society that still valued traditional roles. It was not until decades later, particularly with the passage of national laws in the 1990s, honoring heroic Vietnamese mothers and providing welfare for female veterans, that the state fully institutionalized their sacrifices. By examining these post-war realities, we see that the legacy of Vietnam's female fighters is not just one of battlefield triumph, but also one of enduring resilience in the face of peace's own quiet hardships. The stories of the long-haired army and the young volunteers of Dong Loc are just a fraction of the countless untold histories from this defining era. These women did not seek fame, wealth, or glory. They sought survival, independence, and peace for their families and future generations. Today, their legacy lives on in the vibrant, modern nation of Vietnam, where their sacrifices are honored in monuments, museums, and the quiet remembrance of their descendants. If you found this exploration of Vietnam's female warriors eye-opening, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to help us bring more overlooked historical narratives to light. We want to hear from you. How does learning about the massive, multifaceted role of women change your perspective on the Vietnam War? Do you have family stories of strength, resilience, or survival from this period that you would like to share? Please leave your thoughts, family stories, or questions in the comments below. Your engagement helps us keep these vital, human stories alive for a global audience, ensuring that the contributions of these remarkable women are never forgotten. By sharing this video, you help honor their memory and ensure that their sacrifices are recognized by the world. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next episode as we continue to uncover the hidden truths of our shared past, ensuring that those who stood in the shadows are finally given the light they deserve. Let us keep their stories alive together, honoring the courage that shaped history and continues to inspire generations to come.